This lovely manhwa is titled, I'm Ready for Divorce. If you love stories like this, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. The worst nightmare anyone can face is opening your eyes one morning and realizing you've been reborn as the villainess in a story that was never meant to be yours. Welcome to the world of I'm Ready for a Divorce. It all started just a week ago. She was returning from yet another failed interview, standing by the roadside and waiting for the traffic light to turn green. Beside her stood a small boy. And before she even understood what was happening, the little boy wandered into the middle of the road, crying helplessly as a bus came speeding toward him. Without a second thought, she dashed into the road to save him, pushing him out of the way. But for her, it was already too late. She couldn't move in time. The bus hit her instantly. Opening her eyes, she found herself in another realm. For a moment, she wondered if she was dead. Was this the afterlife? But then, something even stranger appeared before her. A glowing screen notification with two choices. 1, move on and be judged for heaven or hell. 2, be reincarnated into another world. All of this strange moment, this impossible screen, was happening because she saved that little boy's life, and now she had the right to choose her fate. Before she could even think it through, a countdown began. If she didn't make a choice within 10 seconds, option 1 would automatically be selected for her. Panicking, she quickly chose the second option. She knew she wasn't ready for judgment, not yet. Just like that, she was thrown into a romance fantasy world, reborn as a little girl. Elodie wondered why she had to be reborn as the villainess of all people, but then it clicked. The male lead's tragic fate reminded her too much of her own, and because of that she felt a strange, unexplainable affection for him, even though she had only read about him in the novel. According to the main story, Caville is the illegitimate son of Duke Cernwa, abandoned at an orphanage when he was only a baby. The adults there mistreated him endlessly, turning his early years into pure misery. But not long after, his true identity as the Duke's heir was uncovered, and he was taken to the ducal estate. Unfortunately, that was where Caville's real misfortune began. Because of everything he endured at the orphanage, he grew terrified of adults. In an attempt to help him, his well-meaning butler brought in Elodie, a girl older than him, and arranged for her to become his wife. But that decision became the root of all his suffering. Elodie was no different from the adults who tormented him. She quickly seized control of the household, and the way she treated him could make anyone sick to their stomach. Caville's childhood, already fragile, only broke further under her cruelty. Thank goodness the female lead eventually appeared. When Caville was sent to the battlefield at a young age, that was where destiny shifted. There he met the princess from the kingdom of Deav, his destined love. Being reincarnated as the villainess, Elodie felt really bad because it would have been nice if she was the female lead instead. But of course, the story didn't end after Caville met the female lead. He came back from war with her and demanded a divorce. But the villainess, his wife, refused. In fact, she even tormented the female lead, who stayed in the estate. As if that wasn't enough, she created a poison that could turn the entire body into stone. But before she could carry out her plan, Caville caught her in the act. That was how Elodie was expelled from the ducal estate. And afterwards, karma came for her in full force. She contracted an incurable disease with the exact same symptoms as the poison she had created, and of course, she died alone and pitifully. Imagining the whole story she had reincarnated into, Elodie felt disappointed that she was stuck in this situation. She gently tried to wake Caville, who was sleeping next to her, acting all nice and promising that she would read him a story after breakfast. He woke up immediately when he heard that she would read to him. At first, Caville was wary of her when she first entered this body, but she slowly got him to open up after they slept in the same bed for several nights. While Caville was asleep, she finally felt relieved. At least now she had time to plan ahead. She thought about how she had spent so much time with Caville, so having a little time alone felt like a sweet reward after the stress of the day. Staring at the note in front of her, Elodie had written down a list of her future plans. 1, feed Caville well and raise him strong until he goes to the battlefield. 2, protect the territory properly while waiting for Caville's return. And finally, research the cure for that so-called incurable disease. Our lady was lost in thought at this point. Even though she wanted to keep Caville from going to war, joining the battlefield was part of Duke Cernwa's duty under the Emperor's command. There was nothing she could do to change that, and she didn't have the power to stop the war either. Sadly, she knew Caville was sent to the battlefield at just 13 years old. The poor boy would be treated with all kinds of disrespect because of his small frame. But in the end, he still grew up to be a remarkable adult. Still, she couldn't stop herself from crying. Elodie wiped her tears away. She knew it was sad to let him go, but since she couldn't change anything, her new goal was clear. She would make sure the young master was well fed and strong before he left. For the second plan, Our Lady understood that the Duke's territory was large and fertile, but it had been neglected for so long that barely anyone lived there anymore. Naturally, production had dropped too. And in the original story, the villainous Elodie made all kinds of unstable potions while researching magic and dumped them into the lake or the forest, completely ruining the land's fertility. But at least, the good news now was that the land wasn't contaminated yet, so there was still hope. All she needed to do was create a potion that could make the land fertile again. Elodie took note of that, and finally she reached the last goal, finding a cure for the so-called incurable disease. Just the thought alone was scary. In the original story, Elodie ended up with a disease that left her paralyzed before she died. Thinking about it, she found it a little satisfying as the villainess's punishment, but no. Our Lady refused that ending. She was not going to die like that. With her fists clenched in determination, she promised herself she would live a long, quiet, steady life no matter what. And most importantly, she would stay perfectly healthy, too. The next morning at the office, Elodie took her seat. The butler handed her the financial reports for the estate, just as she had requested. She thanked him while he stood there, lost in thought. He was thinking about how her father, Count Maclair, was foolish and greedy. His name was Norman, the butler of House Cernoir, and he worried that Elodie might take after her father, even though they had brought her to the Duke's house. The truth was, they hadn't had many choices when it came to selecting a lady. No one wanted to marry their precious daughter to a poor duke's illegitimate heir. The previous duke and duchess had lived extravagantly and drank heavily. Worse, they fell into full-blown alcoholism and completely neglected the estate. Eventually, due to their excessive drinking, both died from heart failure. Still deep in thought, Norm remembered how urgently they had to act. If they didn't succeed in naming Caville the successor, the estate would have ended up in the hands of the former duke's younger brother, Count Boulogne. He was obviously a terrible choice. Norman had dedicated his entire life to the House of Cernoir, and he could not bear to see it fall into the hands of that vile man. That was why he had searched desperately for the child the former duke had with a maid. He was found in an orphanage. Whatever had happened to the poor boy there left him with a deep fear of adults. He couldn't adjust to his new surroundings at all. That was why Butler Norman hoped he would have a wife who was like a sister, someone kind and comforting. After he was recognized as the rightful heir by the imperial palace, they went to great lengths to prepare a sizable dowry. But because the ducal house's poor condition was well known, it was nearly impossible to arrange a respectful marriage. Only Count Maclair was willing to sell off his daughter without hesitation. He even wrote a contract himself, promising never to involve himself in her life again. Oh, so sad. Our Lady Elodie was never loved at home. Butler Norman looked at her pitifully, almost in tears, wondering how much it must have hurt her to have a father like that, and yet she still carried herself with so much dignity. Truly admirable, he thought. Staring at her, he vowed silently in his mind, "I, Norman, will devote myself to serving you for the rest of my life, my lady." Looking at the records carefully, Elodie realized exactly what she had suspected. The House of Caville had once been a powerful and prestigious ducal house. The very first Duke Cernoir had been a war hero. He had personally conquered vast lands in the name of the empire. But Caville's father, the previous duke, had neglected the territory for years, and now the estate was in serious financial trouble. Just then, she remembered that somewhere in the castle, the former duke had supposedly hidden gold coins and jewels. She sighed, remembering that in the original story, Elodie had found them and wasted all the money. This time, if she could find them first, she might be able to solve the financial crisis. Elodie immediately called the butler and asked him to find a swordsmanship tutor for Caville among the knights. "A future leader needs to start training early," she said firmly. The butler agreed right away. "I understand, my lady. I will report back as soon as I find a suitable candidate." As he stepped out, Norman felt a wave of relief. Holding his chest, he couldn't help but think that now he could finally look Lord Caville's grandfather, the late Duke, in the eye. At the dining table, Our Lady Elodie got annoyed as she watched Caville stuff his mouth with sweets. She quickly told him to stop eating so many. He immediately said okay, looking terrified. Elodie got chills as she stared at his moody, scared little face, and it broke her heart. She thought to herself that she would have honestly let him have as many as he wanted, but too many sweets were bad for his health. To cheer him up, she smiled and said he could tag along if he wanted to play and have fun. As a cute little boy, he got excited and shouted yes. After all, kids need to run and play while they can. "Caville, you're it. Come catch me," she called out. "Okay, Elodie," he replied, full of excitement. Elodie realized she needed to teach him how to stop calling her by her name, so she told him he should call her lady or wife. He looked confused and repeated, "Wife?" "Yes," she answered. "Until you bring a princess into your life, I'm still your wife." "Princess?" he asked again, still confused. She smiled briefly and said, "It's just a thing. I'm your wife, so you've got to call me that. Got it?" Smiling, he replied happily, "Okay, wife." She said, "Good," and started running, telling him to count to 10 before chasing her. Staring at her run, he began counting down 10, 9, 8, while thinking and processing how she had told him to call her wife. He went quiet immediately. Silence filled the air. Elodie turned around, only for him to suddenly catch her in a hug. "Got you," he shouted, taking her by surprise. She screamed, "You cheated," while he laughed at her. Then she softened, staring at him. "You little," she said, patting his head while he hugged her tightly, eyes closed, thinking to himself, "I like my wife. I hope she never goes anywhere. A kind and gentle wife." Already emotional, he promised in his heart that he would never let her go either. Lady Elodie took Caville to his teacher and told him that from that day onwards he would be in charge of the Duke's lessons. His teacher, her lady, called him by name, Sir Bedos. He stammered a quiet yes. Elodie thought to herself that he must be thinking the supposed Duke was a coward, and she imagined him lamenting bitterly in his mind while Caville hid behind her, scared. Pissed and annoyed, with her arms crossed, Our Lady could already read his mind. Her lady told the teacher confidently that Caville acted this way because of how badly he had been treated by adults in the orphanage, so he shouldn't be too hard on him. Bedos replied that he understood, but deep down he was impressed by how mature Elodie was for her age. Her lady then turned to Caville and told him not to be afraid of his teacher. "He's a good person," she said, "and you don't need to worry about anything. I'll be watching up close." She pointed to a bench where she would be sitting. Hearing this, Caville felt a little reassured. Meanwhile, Bedos found it a bit strange that she had called him a good person. Elodie sat on the bench while Caville practiced his swordsmanship. At the same time, she read books about magic and found it very easy to understand and create spells. She thought maybe it was because this body was already used to the field. She realized this body's brain was too powerful and perfectly suited for manna intelligence, but in the story, it had been wasted as a villain. Putting that aside, she discovered that making potions wasn't the real problem. The true challenge was finding the ingredients needed to make them. She thought about how perfect it would be if she had a greenhouse. Then she remembered that the ducal estate already had one, but it wasn't in use. It would cost a lot to repair it for proper use. She considered breaking into the hidden vault to make potions for sale. After all, it was all for the good of the territory. While lost in her thoughts about these plans, she completely forgot she was supposed to be watching Caville. She noticed Bedos was being too hard on the young master with the wooden sword. Caville fell to the ground and began crying. But instead of calming him, Bedos yelled at him to get up and keep practicing. Elodie got angry and jumped in immediately. She yelled at him, reminding him that the poor boy was afraid of adults, yet he had the guts to point the wooden sword at him like that. Bedos defended himself, saying it wasn't like he had actually hit him. Her lady told him to be considerate and gentle, explaining that this was Caville's first time. Bedos smirked and said he understood. Elodie then turned to Caville, carrying him on his back, and said that today's training was over. Bedos watched them leave speechless. He suddenly sighed, realizing he had never taught anyone gently before, but then he felt a spark of hope. He looked forward to future training because he saw real potential in the little boy. Later that night, Elodie helped the young master change into his pajamas. Looking at the wounds on his back, she was reminded of the first time she had bathed him and how horrified she had felt. She gently buttoned his shirt and glanced at his palms, which were all scraped. She asked if it hurt, and he began shedding tears quietly, saying that it did. Caville was the type who didn't cry out loud even when he was hurt. He only let tears fall silently. She asked him if the adults in the orphanage had scolded him for crying. At first she had thought it was brave to cry quietly, but now she realized it was unusual. She held his hands and told him it was natural to cry out loud whenever he was hurt, and that nobody here would scold him for crying. Caville asked if that was really true. She made him promise to always cry when he was hurt because keeping it in could make him sick. He smiled and promised to follow her advice. She was pleased to hear him say that. She also helped him apply ointment on his wounds, assuring him that the adults who had hurt him were nothing compared to him. He admitted that he was still scared of them, but she told him there was no reason to be and that she would help him scold every single one of them. She asked if he remembered their faces and told him to describe everything he could recall. Caville spoke freely, explaining and describing how big and thick their noses and mouths were. Elodie helped him draw how horrible they looked until they both fell asleep. A maid walked in and covered them with the sheets, adorably. She picked up the picture they had drawn and wondered who it was and how funny it looked. Meanwhile, in her mind, Elodie was cursing those adults and threatening to deal with them if she ever caught any of them. Elodie finally found the vault, leaving the butler shocked. He was amazed, and she pretended not to know it existed, thinking to herself how stressful it had been to find it. Her lady wondered how to use the money so that people would praise her for spending it wisely. She turned to the butler and asked if she could use it. He replied, "Of course you can. After all, it was left for the Duke and his wife." Elodie made her first order, using half of the gold to reinforce the knights. She wanted to build a strong army for Caville since he would inevitably be going to war. There was no way to escape it, so she had to ensure there was enough force to strengthen the territory. The butler agreed immediately. It all made sense to her lady now why the duchy was lost in the novel, because no one questioned the villainess's actions. Elodie went ahead and instructed Bedos to act as the commander. He was shocked. She made it clear that the young master needed someone to take that position for now. Bedos pointed out that training the young master was already a lot for him, and now she wanted him to be the commander too. Her lady looked at him confused. "Why are you pretending to be busy when you don't even have a wife or kids? On top of that, you don't even have a lover," she said. Bedos was shocked. Her words hit him like an arrow piercing his heart. Elodie smiled, knowing she had achieved her goal of making him the commander, and he agreed, caught in his own pretense. During lunch, she read stories to Caville. He suddenly asked if they could live in a candy house, just like the fairy tale she had read to him. Her lady, trying to tease him, said, "If we live in a candy house, ants will attack us." Immediately, his face turned sour. She mumbled, "I hate ants," feeling bad for making him sad. She also felt sad knowing he had missed out on simple joys like this because he had grown up in an orphanage. While he was eating candy, she noticed something and quickly asked him to stand up. As he did, her lady saw how much he had grown and agreed with the saying that kids grow overnight. She grabbed his hands and led him to the door. Taking a pen, she measured his height. "Let's measure your height here every year," she said, smiling. She even told him he would be taller than her when he grew up. Her lady knew this because in the story, Caville was described as a very tall and handsome man. Instantly, she felt proud to be the one training him. He noticed her happiness and asked what was wrong. She hugged him and said she was happy because he was the most beautiful in the world. Caville held her tight, promising that when he was all grown and taller than her, he would give her a hug too. "Isn't this so cute?" She patted him on the head, thinking that when he was grown, the one receiving those hugs would be the princess, not her. As happy as she felt now, she knew she wouldn't see him for 10 years while he was at war. She wouldn't even be able to measure his height during that time. She felt so sad, wishing she could see what he would look like when he fell in love. She was sure he would be adorable. She held him tight, promising that for now she would at least make his memories happy. One afternoon, the butler came to her lady's office telling her about both birthdays. Her lady was surprised, which made him wonder if she had bad memories when it came to keeping birthday records. He thought he might have made a mistake by bringing it up now. But her lady was happy. She told him she liked the idea of celebrating birthdays with Caville together, and that he should go ahead and plan the party. The butler was happy. She liked the idea. Her lady thought to herself how amazing this plan was. She realized that Elodie probably didn't have memories of birthdays because her father, Count Maclair, had children both with his wife and illegitimately, and he never celebrated any of their birthdays. Elodie had never been particularly close with her siblings. Her elder brother was an exception. She remembered him celebrating her birthday once by giving her a gift. Elodie thought sadly about how she had never had good memories in her previous life either. She had been an orphan and didn't even know her exact birth date, so she had never really celebrated birthdays, which meant she would be celebrating her very first birthday this time. Caville, who was sitting close to her, asked what her birthday was. She was surprised he didn't even know. She told him it was the day a person was born. He asked, "Is that a good thing?" She explained how special it was, telling him it was a day when he could eat as much as he wanted. His eyes widened in surprise. She felt bad that he, too, had never had a proper birthday since he grew up in the orphanage. She wondered what kind of birthday gift she could give him since he was still a child. Caville was a smart boy who learned faster than most people. She felt proud that he had already mastered 2 ancient languages. But she also realized it made sense he was destined to become a swordmaster. Swordmasters use their own mana to create an aura, and Caville had a high mana affinity. Her lady patted him gently, mumbling to herself that she was sure learning these ancient languages would be a great help for him in the future. It was finally the day of the birthday party. A huge cake was set up, and the servants sang happy birthday songs for the 2 of them. Her lady seemed truly happy and excited. She loved all the birthday presents she received, even the dress she was wearing. The maids were warm and cheerful, clearly delighted for them. Elodie handed Caville the birthday present she had made for him. She thought to herself that since she had made it herself, he would like it, even if it was a bit clumsy. When he opened the package, it was a bunny. Caville, who hadn't been smiling before, lit up with excitement. He hugged it tightly, unable to hide his joy. The butler called out to him, reminding him that he should give a gift to her lady, too. Elodie was surprised. Caville had prepared something for her as well. He handed over a small box, and her face lit up with happiness as she opened it. Inside there were sweets and a handwritten note, in which he said he hoped she liked it. "Aw, that's so sweet." Time passed quickly, and it was already a year later. Her lady was now 14, and Caville was 8. The butler came over, saying they needed to hire more servants. She approved and told him to take care of it. Over the past years, Sir Betis had led the knights very well. Thanks to him, new apprentices had joined, and because of that, the servants had been extremely busy preparing meals. Just a few days ago, Caville had stood confidently before the knights as their lord for the first time. It was the ceremony for appointing an apprentice, and he had to appear. Her lady held his hands throughout the occasion so he wouldn't get too anxious. Her lady had been working very hard, and the butler had been extremely helpful. She decided to use the remaining gold coins to repair the greenhouse, and next to it, she planned to build a laboratory. Elodie reminded the butler that she was going to the market with Caville today to look around and buy some things. He confirmed that she would be going with Marie, the maid, and also Betos. Her lady explained that she was only taking the young master because it was her first time leaving the mansion and he was likely to throw tantrums, so she had to take him along. With candy stuffed in his mouth, she thought to herself that she had kept him so close that he didn't want to be apart. At this point, she wondered if he would ever ask her to go to the battlefield with him. Caville asked his lady if it was really necessary for her to go to the market herself. She replied, "It's really important to get the herbs directly from the merchant myself." Marie rushed in saying the carriage was ready. Her lady called Caville, who was still stuffing candies in his mouth, saying it was time to go. When they entered the market, Elodie felt it was livelier than she had expected. She thought it was still small compared to the size of the domain, but she was sure it would grow gradually. Sir Betos warned them to be careful because the crowd was crowded. Caville wasn't as excited as Elodie. Just then, she saw a flashy sight, the entrance of the Rondia merchants. She wondered why they looked so gloomy. Was it because they were disappointed the market was small? Marie, however, was thrilled. The Rondia merchants were famous for traveling all over the continent and for their original perfumes. Elodie remembered from the novels that their perfumes were special. Suddenly, she recalled how the heroine had discovered the Rondia merchants, tried their perfumes, and became attractively noticed by the opposite sex, which had led to a messy situation, and Caville had shown up to rescue her. Elodie stared at him with a funny expression, remembering that they had shared their first kiss in the story. Caville asked, confused, why she was staring at him like that. She didn't say a word. Instead, she thought to herself that maybe she should research the perfumes. They might be very profitable. She asked Marie to get one if she was buying hers, which left Marie surprised. Meanwhile, her lady just wanted to study it. Elodie pushed Caville ahead, asking Betos to keep an eye on him since the crowd was getting thick. Before she could even finish her sentence, the crowd surged toward them. She lost sight of Caville. Both of them yelled and struggled to reach each other, but couldn't. Caville was terrified. He felt his life flash before his eyes as if he was losing the one person he needed most. Caville disappeared, and her lady and the others searched for him after the crowd cleared but couldn't find him. Elodie wondered where he could have run off to and refused to give up searching. Meanwhile, on the other side, Caville found himself alone in an alley. Just as he began to cry, some older kids appeared in front of him. Seeing them, he froze in shock. They spoke to him harshly, annoyed that he had been adopted into a wealthy family while they remained in the streets as pickpockets. One of them grabbed his collar, demanding he hand over everything he had, even the clothes he was wearing. Caville shut his eyes, wishing her lady would come to rescue him, and just like that, they heard a loud voice calling out. It was her lady. The boys were surprised. They couldn't believe an 8-year-old could be married and assumed it was just a game of playing house. Elodie reached out her hands to Caville, asking him to come to her. He looked at her innocently and didn't hesitate. He ran toward her and hugged her tightly. She held him close and demanded to know who the kids were and how they knew Caville. The boys smirked, saying they were from the same orphanage as him and mocked him for being a coward hiding behind his lady's skirt. Elodie shouted at them to shut up, freezing them instantly. Her face was terrifying to look at. They couldn't believe a girl was commanding them. Angry, they started talking trash, acting tough. Meanwhile, Marie spotted the kids and immediately told Sir Betos. On arriving, he was surprised to see Elodie handling the situation herself, pulling the kids by the heads and scolding them. Betos asked what was happening. Her lady told him he came at the perfect time. Seeing an adult, the kids ran off. Elodie told Betos not to chase them. He asked who they were, and she explained they were kids from Caville's orphanage. Betos said she would find pickpocket kids everywhere in the territory. At that moment, she realized she needed to inspect the town once the greenhouse was sorted. Just then, she noticed a brooch on the ground. She picked it up, and they confirmed it was old. Betos said it was a gemstone and could be an artifact. Elodie held it in her hand, thinking that artifacts are one-time magical tools containing spells and can only be afforded by great nobles. It was obvious those kids had stolen it. Suddenly, a voice called politely from behind. A young man with black hair and brown skin asked if they had seen some kids around, saying they had stolen his brooch. Her lady lifted the brooch, and the young man's eyes lit up. "That's the brooch I lost!" he exclaimed. She handed it back, and he thanked her gratefully, hugging it to his chest. "I thought I'd never see it again," he said. Elodie explained that the kids had dropped it while running away and she had found it. He thanked her again, saying it was a keepsake from his mother and that she was his savior. He introduced himself. I'm Circa, the head of the Rondia Merchant Guild. Her lady was surprised. She thought for a moment, doing quick calculations in her head before speaking. Circa offered to give her gifts for saving his precious memento, but she politely refused, saying he should visit their castle sometime. Circa looked confused. Elodie introduced Caville as the Lord of Manwha Castle, and he was amazed. Her lady felt relieved. At least everything was falling into place, and she wouldn't have to worry about distributing potions once she started selling them. Back at the castle, it was late, and heavy rain pounded against the windows, accompanied by loud thunderstorms. Caville lay on his bed, struggling in a troubling dream. He dreamt of being punished in the orphanage whenever he got into trouble, begging desperately to be forgiven. In the dream, he began shivering uncontrollably. Suddenly, his lady appeared, but instead of saving him, she had a dangerous look on her face. She told him she was abandoning him because that's what he deserved. Caville woke up instantly. His heart raced as he realized her lady was not in the bed with him. He sat up and called out, but there was no response. Tears began to fall. Moments later, Elodie appeared, smiling gently. "Are you awake?" she asked, touching his face. She explained that she had come to check on him when she heard the thunder. Her lady asked if he had a nightmare, but Caville didn't answer, leaving her confused. In his mind, he worried that if he let go of her, she might abandon him like everyone else had. He hugged him tightly, refusing to let go. "You can do anything to me," he whispered. "I won't complain or throw a tantrum. Just don't leave me." Elodie wondered what kind of nightmare could have made him panic. She held him close and told him he could cry as much as he wanted to. She knew he wouldn't be able to sleep now, no matter what. "Caville, let's play shadow puppets," she said. "What's that?" he asked, curious. Her lady brought a candle and they sat across from each other on the rug. She used her hands to create shadows of animals on the wall, telling him their names. Caville watched, surprised and amazed. Elodie smiled, glad that he was feeling better. Later, they returned to bed, and Caville couldn't stop staring at her. He wondered why she was so kind to him when he felt useless. He remembered how gentle she had been on the first day, too. He couldn't understand why someone in this world would treat him with so much affection. He moved closer to her, shut his eyes, and silently wished they would never be separated. The next day, Elodie, as usual, visited the maids in their quarters to chat. They were all sitting around the table, but her lady seemed restless. Marie noticed immediately and asked, "What's wrong?" Elodie hesitated, but in her mind she worried about how she hadn't made any progress on the medicine and didn't even know where to start. On top of that, Circa, the merchant guild head, would soon come to visit and she hadn't prepared anything yet. Marie noticed Tessie looking unwell and asked what was wrong. Tessie replied softly, "It's that time of the month. I have stomach aches." Marie suggested, "Why don't we pick some spirit grass for you?" Tessie frowned. "I don't like it." Overhearing this, Elodie asked curiously, "What's spirit grass and what's it used for?" Tessie explained, "It's a weed villagers use as a painkiller," she added. "It barely works and it's extremely bitter." Elodie thought for a moment and then her eyes sparkled. She had an idea. They all went out into the field searching for spirit grass among the weeds. Elodie picked one and asked, "Is this it?" Tessie shook her head. "No." Elodie instantly understood why it wasn't widely used, because it was almost impossible to tell apart from the other weeds. Tessie laughed and admitted she sometimes got confused, too. Then Tessie picked a weed, chewed it, and immediately grimaced. "Found it!" she exclaimed. Elodie realized how to identify spirit grass by testing it. Without thinking, she grabbed a few pieces and chewed them. Her face immediately turned sour, and she spat it out. Caville, who had been watching, worried and exclaimed, "Your face!" Tessie laughed. "Most people don't know about this grass. They go to doctors, which is expensive. You've never tried it before, have you?" Elodie shook her head. "This is my first time, and the bitterness lingers on my tongue." Curious, she asked, "Why is it called spirit grass?" Tessie explained that's not its real name. My grandfather called it that because it's a painkiller found in nature. He said it's a gift from the spirits. Elodie smirked. "With a taste like that, it should be called devil's grass. That suits it better." They continued picking the grass. Tessie asked hesitantly, "Are you really going to make a potion with this?" Elodie noted confidently. All the maids stared at her in amazement. In their minds, they whispered, "She really is a wizard." In this world, magic was a remnant of ancient nature worship. A legendary great wizard, born from nature itself and ruler of all spirits, had passed down his magic to humans. His disciples recorded these spells in an ancient language to preserve them for future generations. But over time, most of the books were monopolized and declared forbidden. Without access to these texts, wizards couldn't grow their power. Magic became rare, and only the wealthy could enjoy its benefits. Elodie thought to herself that if she could at least make painkiller potions, it would help the people who were badly injured, and when Caville went to the battlefield, it would protect him too. With the greenhouse and laboratory finally completed, she knew that everything she needed for success was now in her hands. After many days of hard work and consistency in the laboratory, Elodie finally achieved her goal. She had made her first magic potion. She knew she was able to achieve this because of this body, and it was quite easy. Her lady stared confidently at the bottle, knowing it was a perfect painkiller. By carefully infusing fine manna, she had reduced the bitterness, making it easier to take and distribute. Since most medicines in the market were potions, these pills would seem more convenient. To test it, she inflicted a small pain on her hand and took the pill. Instantly, the pain vanished. Satisfied, she thought about letting others try it to see its effects. Elodie came across the maids chatting while sweeping and shouted, "Is anyone injured or hurt?" Tessie confirmed she was fine now, and Marie wasn't hurt either. Elodie sighed. They weren't good test subjects. Then who should I test it on? She wondered aloud. Marie suggested the knights, and immediately Elodie realized it was a perfect idea. She walked into the knights' training room with Caville. The knights froze at the sight of her. They hadn't expected her and were bracing for a lecture, thinking she had come to complain. To their surprise, Elodie smiled warmly. "Is anyone hurt?" she asked. They exhaled in relief. Finally, she wasn't here to nag. From behind, someone spoke up about being injured. Elodie turned and saw Damisola. She smiled warmly at her lady, always treating her with kindness as if she were her little sister. Elodie asked, "Are you hurt?" "No," Damisola said. Instead, she dragged Ren forward. "He was hit quite a lot during training." Ren blushed and admitted it. "I'm constantly beaten by my lover," he muttered. Elodie brought out her potion pills and handed them to him. "Try this," she said. He hesitated. "Is this a cure?" "No, it's just a pain reliever, not poison," she replied firmly. He looked doubtfully at her. "You really wouldn't give me something harmful?" Damisola laughed and tapped his back. "Even if it were poison, I'd take it for her, lady." She hugged him from behind, coaxing him. "Stop acting childish in front of the young lord," she teased. Ren panicked but finally put the pill in his mouth. Elodie smiled proudly. "It's a little bitter, but tolerable." He stretched his arm to test the pain and felt nothing. Damisola asked eagerly if it still hurt, and Elodie corrected her. "It's not a cure, it's a pain reliever." Damasola's eyes sparkled. "You're a genius. I'd hug and kiss you for this." Elodie laughed, proud and happy that her potion worked. Betos clapped his hands and praised her lady for her achievement. She noticed Caville smiling at her. She asked him, "Aren't you happy for me?" He grinned, saying he's happy too. A few days later, Circa, the merchant guild head, finally paid a visit. He sat with her lady in the living room, saying he had finally come to repay her kindness. Her lady reminded him that he promised to repay her kindness, and he confirmed it, saying he had to. Elodie asked if he could do her a favor, and he replied, saying he would do anything so she should name it. "I want to distribute some things that I made through the Rondia guild," she requested, leaving him confused. He asked what kind of product she was talking about, and her lady called out to Marie to bring her first product, which is the pain reliever. Circa was surprised that a kid had made something and wanted to distribute it. He asked if it was candy while holding the bottle container, but she replied, saying it is a pain reliever made with magic. Circa, on hearing it was a painkiller, was shocked. He couldn't hide his amazement. He asked if she really made it herself, and her lady was proud because it was obvious no one would have thought of making this type of pill. Circa asked to test the product immediately because he was curious and still found it amazing that she made it herself. Elodie was glad that she got to meet the guild master and have him test her first product himself. Circa cut himself, and she suggested taking it for the wound. When he did, he instantly stopped feeling the pain. He was even more amazed and praised her for having quite an amazing skill. She asked if he felt inclined to distribute it, thinking to herself that he was being a bit too dramatic. Circa agreed immediately, adding that he'd place the price very high because it's worth any price. But Elodie suggested he make it not too expensive because she knows it's well needed by commoners. He was surprised and reminded her that it's a fast effect pill, so it should surpass high-tier magical potions, but she stood her ground on it being affordable. He pointed out that if she made it affordable, supply would be limited, but she pointed out it wouldn't be a problem at all. Her lady was confident because even before summoning him, the pills were being produced regularly by an automatic manufacturing device she developed. It's the first MagTech device she's ever made, and it's running just fine. Just that the noise it makes is no joke. Business with Circa was sealed, and he promised to be back once he wrapped up business in the capital. Elodie asked how much he was offering for the down payment, which left Circa surprised. She smiled, saying the Rondia merchants aren't the only ones visiting the territory, so she'll have to decide based on the deposit. Circa thought to himself that if he let this slip, he'd be a big fool. He told her immediately that he'd give her whatever she wanted. Elodie took out her statement form and handed it over, saying she'd be taking the deposit and the prepayment for the first batch. Going through the deal, Circa thought to himself that it was a heftier advance than expected, but the production cost was low, so this was practically a steal. Elodie also stated that if it is sold at a different price than agreed, he won't receive a second batch. She moved towards him, reaching out her hands for a handshake, and he was stunned by how thorough she was at this age. He felt ashamed for underestimating her in even the slightest. Both shook hands, and he smiled, assuring her that if it went well, she could really entrust them with future medicines. She asked if he'd like to also test future medicines himself, and he replied, saying he'd bring his younger sibling since they run the business together. Meanwhile, Caville, on the other hand, spoke up, asking him to let go of her hands already. He was pissed seeing him still holding on to her lady's hands. Circa let go immediately, and Elodie told Caville it was just a handshake, but he wasn't buying it. Circa laughed, saying he was leaving anyway. They said their goodbyes, and he left right away. Elodie turned to Caville excitedly, thinking to herself that this was such a huge deposit and he'd accepted the deal immediately. She hugged him, saying she'd definitely make him rich, and Caville, feeling her warmth, smiled. The next day, Elodie decided to learn how to ride a horse. On her very first try, Damsola praised her for being talented even at this. They praised her so much that she asked them not to exaggerate. On the other hand, Caville was standing in a corner. Her lady reached out her hands to him and asked him to come ride with her, but he refused. It seemed like he was scared. Elodie felt sad. She thought to herself, one day he'd end up on a battlefield. What would he do if he was scared of horses like this? At that moment, she knew for sure she needed to master riding quickly so she could teach him. Just then, they heard the butler's voice from behind. He came running toward them, panicking, saying there was trouble. Her lady got down from the horse with the help of Damsola, and the butler informed her about Count Bologna's arrival at the estate. On hearing the name, her lady suddenly remembered that he was Caville's good-for-nothing uncle who disliked him. Count Bologna, unlike the former duke, was an utter scoundrel. Even as a child, he indulged in all the worst habits: drugs, gambling, and more. Before the former duke passed away, he had strictly ordered that the Duchy of Cernor must never fall into Count Bologna's hands. That was why they had searched desperately for the young lord. Now the butler feared that this vile man showing up might be to threaten the young master and her lady. Sitting in the living room, Count Bologna, wearing an ugly and disheartening expression, thought to himself how shabby and disorganized the estate had become. After his brother's death, he had originally thought this would all be his, only for them to bring in an illegitimate child of a maid to claim what was rightfully his. This is where this part of the story ends. If you love this story and you want us to continue, please comment the protagonist's name, Elodie.